Hello, hello.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to get into it. So,
Yes.
yeah, we are today. This is our first retrospective, where essentially we're going to be watching, movies. That's nothing new, but these are older movies, hence the name, that typically one of us won't have seen until today.
Yeah.
We're starting off with a new, I should say, duology of films that you have never seen before.
Exactly. So the idea is that, we've got the perspective of someone who knows these films quite well versus the perspective of someone who's watching them for the first time.
Yes.
And, they could be films from a few years ago or as far back as,
yes, and they could be films that we love or really don't like, and maybe we want to go back and see like, oh, does it hold up?
Yeah.
Or even films that maybe we think hasn't aged quite well, so there could be many reasons. Now, like we mentioned, today is about Rob's, first entrant into, do you want to intro the films you watched?
Yes. So the films that I've watched for the first time now were Paddington 1 and Paddington 2.
Yes, so delightful. So before we get into actual thoughts regarding the films, first thing we want to do is just touch on our history. Now, we've been a bit open with it. You obviously have never seen it before. However, what is, like, if any type of history, like, why haven't you seen it before? Given
Sure.
This is actually quite interesting, yeah.
Yeah, so I should say that I've been aware and known Paddington and the Paddington story since I was a child. My mother is English, so therefore,
So that makes it more surprising.
Yeah, so Paddington was around the house.
Yeah.
Paddington was on the TV.
Yeah.
So I've known of the character and his world for my whole life. And I think when the films were coming out, I skipped them both because we were getting this overabundance of like really cash grabby children's stories like the Peter Rabbit movies and the Alvin and the Chipmunks, and I was like, okay, here's another one. So it just melded into the background.
Yeah.
But there's always been an interest in my mind to watch them ever since my best mate and I, we one day were just kind of curious and we saw that Paddington 2 had a higher Rotten Tomatoes score than like fucking Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
we were
accurately so, I just want to say.
So we were a little bit like, really? Is this a joke? Have we gone into the Bizarro verse? What's going on here? And it's become like a joke between my mate Elliot and I, being like, oh, Paddington 2, greatest film ever made. But of course, neither of us have seen it.
Oh,
yeah, neither of us have seen it. So that's my history with these Paddington movies.
Right. And my history is I saw them when they came out. I have loved them. I think that delightful is the perfect word. And I don't know how, but somehow the second one not only is the same quality, it's like surmounted it, which we will get into it, but in terms of success as well, like the second one, Paddington 2, is almost more loved widely than the original one, but somehow they've just managed to make a couple of films that are really nice. It's just about kindness and love and family, and it's just kind of like, why do we always have to focus on the bad?
So on that basis, it's quite clear that you love these films.
I love these films, and I love them in a way of like, I love my dogs, you know what I mean? Like, I love them. They're just heartwarming, So, but yes, you are right. Let's get into your initial thoughts. So that's my basis. There is history, and it's quite a positive one. However, Rob, what did you think of Paddington 1 and Paddington 2?
So I watched it with my fiance. Once the movies had concluded, I called Elliot, who I had the long-standing joke with. And I told him, I've watched Paddington 1 and 2. And he got very excited.
Yes.
And I said to him, now I might need to sit on it a bit longer to decide whether or not Paddington 2 is the greatest film ever made. Yeah. But when you look at Paddington 1 and 2, they are so cohesively made as one unit that I would have them as a pair put into the same kind of like category sequelization, as you would say, Spider-Man 1 and 2, Godfather 1 and 2, Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. You know, films where you literally
Star Wars and Empire. Yeah.
It's films where you literally cannot talk about one without the other.
Yeah.
I'll give it that.
Yeah.
And then he said to me, Rob, what I'm hearing is you're talking about Paddington 1 and 2 in the same sentence as The Godfather.
I know, your favorite movie.
Yeah. So
One of.
So immediately I was like, yes, well, to be fair, I did really, really enjoy them, especially Paddington 2.
Yes.
And I was nervous because you're thinking, okay, when's the moment where I'm going to cry? Or when's the moment where I'm going to feel it in my heart? You know, when you know the film's so beloved, you're waiting for that. And I was sitting there not getting it, but I was enjoying the characters, I was enjoying the story, I was enjoying the adventure. And I'm thinking, this is all very well done and incredibly engaging and very delightful. I'm like, when is that moment going to hit me? And it was literally right at the end where Paddington's auntie's at the door and the whole community has brought her over from darkest Peru. Yeah. And he's hugging her, and then I'm getting teary, and then credits. Yeah. It was like the film literally was, there was not an ounce of fat on it, and it was like, we've got you to be emotional about this fucking bear. And now you're done. And I'm like, that's fantastic. Yeah,
so, it's just like a night. You know what it is? It's like in movies or in classical pieces of music where it's like a swell, and then it's like a you know, it ends.
Yeah. So I think I was looking at this film being like, I cannot imagine anyone coming away from Paddington 1 and 2, particularly 2, not enjoying it on some level.
And that is have a heart.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's a great litmus test for should I bother trying with you?
I think that if you've come out of Paddington 2 in particular not smiling, you're probably a robot.
Honestly, I think that the way they intro you, you know, they set up the world, they set up, okay, this is Paddington, he lives with this family, he's a bear that lives, you know, in England, and he's very polite. That's all you really need to know. And he's very lovely, right? It's very economical in that you're in the story. Like, you only need a couple minutes, quick intro for those who you've forgotten, those of you that don't know. Now let's get into the actual story here, which is, you know, Hugh Grant being a mastermind of you know, badness.
Yeah. I mean, even like Nicole Kidman, I really enjoyed her as Clyde.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought she was fantastic as well.
As the daughter of the hunter and everything.
I really enjoyed her turn as a villain, and I think that, you know, when I looked at her performance, and even like you know, Hugh Bonneville and Sally Hawkins, they all
let me just say, the acting, like, I can't believe the cast they've got.
They all know what movie they're in, but that doesn't mean that their performances were one note. Yeah. Which is a thing that
they're not phoning it in.
They're not phoning it in, and I think the thing with that is that you can look at their performances and you think, yeah, sure, they're not naturalistic, they're not, you know, hugely dramatic, but they are doing an incredible job understanding the wholesome world that they are inhabiting.
But that's what I mean. It felt, both movies feel like a storybook to me. Like, it feels like I'm being read a storybook before I go to sleep at night. And I mean, that's what Paddington was, right? It was a cute little bear that lived with humans, and you would read it to your kids. You know, you said yourself you had the experience of it.
Yep.
And they kept that vibe, and it's like, even the music, everything from the music to the stylization of the sets to the costuming. I think that it's really interesting to me how much the world has accepted this movie, or these movies, I should say, because you're right, from the surface level, it's a couple of family films. It is you know, and you're right, like Peter Rabbit, when that comes out, there's no iota of me that wants to go willingly see that movie, right? Same with, you know, Alvin and the Chipmunks, if that's even still a thing. Like, there's just some movies where you're like, oh, that's for families, you know, that's for parents to take their kids to keep them occupied. And Paddington could have, and probably did.
It could have so easily gone down that path.
But it's like they actually tried. You can tell that there's a lot of love for the source material. Like this is a very important part of English culture.
I mean, I really did feel that because when you were being introduced to Paddington and he's saying how he doesn't have a name in English and he's got his little bear scream and, you know, they find him at Paddington Station and he's got his stare that he gives people.
I was just thinking of the stare where he's just like...
Yeah, that was the best thing.
Thinking, it's like that's the meanest he is. He's just like, that's not very nice.
No, but like that stare, like when it cuts to, you know, Knuckles and Mr. Brown, where they're having the stare subjected onto them, and they're like, what's happening? What's going on? I'm like, I as a viewer felt that, and I really was like,
you don't want this little bear to be mad at you.
I don't want to upset this little bear. And, you know, like the film does make you want to be a better human.
It does, and this is what I mean. I think part of the reason I love these two films so much, and especially the second one, because I think the first one was about setting the tone, right? Setting the world, setting the tone, and then the second one got to just kind of play with it and really delve into those themes more. I think movies that promote kindness in the way that these do are so important because obviously
not enough of them.
There aren't enough of them, but also there aren't enough of them when they do happen that are done well.
I mean, you even look at the scene where he's using the facilities for the first time in the first one, where that to me showed how much care they were putting into characterizing and, you know, creating this when I say realistic, I mean believable character.
That's a good way of saying it. It's like, obviously, we all know.
It's not realistic, and it looks like a cartoon. Of course it does.
He doesn't look like a bear. He kind of looks like a teddy bear.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And that scene where he's in the bathroom and he is at the sink and he's looking at the toothbrush, and I just love the care that was put into like having him act very genuine, where he's got that little moment where he turns around and he's like, is anyone watching what's going on? And then he like puts it in his ears and his nose, and the eyes do not have the uncanny valley effect. There is the shine to them. There's the life in the eyes. And I'm
even though it's a bear eye, so there's not a lot of white there, you know, it's like, yeah, absolutely. But also you believe that it's like darkest Peru is a thing, you know, and you believe that he can feel emotion and form bonds and not kill everyone because he's a bear. And I think that again, the care behind the choice of the actor, where it's like it's a grown man doing it, but the way he does it is in a like, oh yes, I do believe in him, and he's just like, oh yes, I don't have a name. I've always wanted a name, you know. And it's just like,
and because they're kind of making sure that the world is, you know, at least believable in the sense that you suspend your disbelief while watching it. You can watch it and be fine with like, oh yeah, the daughter, you know, can learn bear language, and then that plays into the climax where she speaks to him while he's in the furnace pipe, and you know, similar things in that same film where Mr. Brown is dressing as like the cleaning lady. And then the security guard like falls in love with him. And the security guard who's weirdly horny, and he's back for the second one as well. And that's probably why I was like, oh, these two are so definitively linked as a pair of films, you know?
But they're not, because I don't even think they thought they'd get a second one. It's just the first one was so successful. It was just so, again, everyone embraced it.
Yeah.
And then the second one came around, they were like, okay, well, what do we want to improve this time around? Why don't we make the villain just a little bit more like charismatic?
And why don't we also have it be a very personal story about him just trying to do the right thing by the woman who raised him?
Yes.
And I think setting up from the very first scene that they would have wanted to go to England, but they gave it up to raise this beautiful little child.
Yeah.
And then the child's doing everything he can to give back to his maternal figure. I'm like, that is something that anyone
can relate to.
Yeah, anyone can relate to, and everyone will relate to in different ways throughout their life. And I'm thinking that, you know, this film, particularly Paddington 2, it might be in the top 10 best family films of the 2010s. I think I would definitely give it that. And I mean, if you want to have that as, you know, definitive proof that I think it's one of the best films ever made, but I mean, if you're cracking into the top 10 of anything, you know, so I think Paddington 2 definitely did live up to what I was hoping it would be.
I think it almost touches into the Pixar element. Like, Pixar transcends age and always hits, right? Like, you know, within reason. this movie transcends age, transcends, like, I don't have kids, I'm not in the same situation as the family there or as most of the target audience, but it's just wonderful.
In a way, Paddington has a harder job because when you look to the Pixar comparison, let's look at, like, say, The Incredibles, right?
Yeah.
Incredibles, sure, kids will love it because it's superhero and it's cartoon. But the way that those voice performances are done and the way that the story is written, it plays like a live-action adult drama.
Yeah.
And it just happens to be, written in a way where they can imply violence and imply adult themes. But really, when you watch The Incredibles, that's not a kid's film, but kids can watch it. Whereas Paddington is
a kid's film that adults can watch.
Yes, it's directed squarely at children in the way that it's performed, in the way that it's written, in the way that the story unfolds, and in the way that it's directed. But at no point does any of that make the adult 28-year-old male, no way does it make me go, oh, this is cringy, this is something that I'd rather be doing anything else, oh, this is silly, this isn't for me. I was on board for every decision because I was seeing the care and the effort and the beauty in it.
So now that we've discussed it and themes and human nature at length, ultimately what we're going to do at the end of every retro as well is talk about, has it aged well, which I think is going to be especially important as we get into older movies and, even as society grows. So, Rob, in your opinion, has Paddington 1 and Paddington 2, have they aged well?
I would say that in this particular case, it hasn't been long enough for them to age.
Yes.
So I'm gonna say, sure, of course they aged well.
Fair.
We're not even.
But I mean, even in the effects, like, there's been enough time, I would say.
But because the effects aren't trying to be super realistic, they're just trying to, be tangible. I think, sure, like they haven't. We're not even 10 years out from the first one. I think, number 2 in particular will. Age like a fine wine. I mean, I am already forecasting that I'm probably going to be showing these to my kids.
100%. So, I'm going to be watching it tonight, let's be honest. Okay.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think that obviously, I think you generally need at least a decade, but everything about it still holds a special place in my heart. So I would say yes. So let's get into the rating system. So as a reminder, or for those of you that don't know, we have a 5-point rating system. So starting from the bottom and working our way up, we have cold trash, hot garbage, socks at Christmas, hot soup, and shining treasure. So on that scale, where would you put, and let's do both, Paddington and Paddington 2, where would you put them?
If it's not clear, Paddington 2 is a shining treasure. Yes. And I think I might still give Paddington 1 a shining treasure.
I'm the same.
Yeah.
I'm the same. I think so. I think because I think Paddington 2 is so good, right? It's so amazing, but I think the Paddington 1 is still a fantastic film. Like, there's nothing wrong with it.
No.
It's still a great story. It still has a really interesting villain with a fun twist,
It still has great themes about being at home and finding a family.
And it's still, like, funny. It's still hilarious. Like, that whole bathroom scene that's iconic, and Jim Broadbent and, like, all of those elements, they're still there. And Paddington 2 just takes them and runs because now they're like, oh, well, we know that works. Let's just go to the next level. But that doesn't quell the quality of the first one. So I agree. Yes.
So our next retro
is you locking me into it, isn't it?
On camera too. So
the next one will be something I haven't seen. So as a little teaser for everyone, we'll be talking about, and I'll be seeing for the first time, The Departed.
Martin Scorsese's Boston crime drama, The Departed.
The Departed. It must always be said with a Boston accent. The Departed. So, if I hate it, that might be the last episode.
Because our friendship might be over at that point. Yeah.
But all that aside, I think that I want to go watch Paddington 2 now.
That's fair. But I mean, maybe you should go watch The Departed as per your homework.
Yeah, I've got time. I want to feel warm and fuzzy. So.
That's fair. The Departed will not make you feel warm and fuzzy.
No, that'll make me feel cold and just sad.
I think anyone who feels warm and fuzzy by The Departed is probably some of the people who would feel
nothing
annoyed
from Paddington.
Yeah,
exactly.
The people
Like,
we said we don't want to mix
it's
with.
a good litmus test. Maybe both.
Yeah,
Imagine.
just watch Paddington 2 and The Departed, and whichever one makes you happier, you'll know whether or not you're a decent human
or a psychopath.
or a psychopath.
That could be a great psychopath gene test. You know how they do the psychopath test? That could be it. Anyway, on that note, thanks for taking a break with Clean Slate. We'll see you next time.